Welcome to Edge Time. This is the disassembly for the CobraTec Medium FS3. If you've never disassembled an OTF knife before, this may seem a little bit daunting, but these are actually quite easy to disassemble. So, we will go ahead and get into it. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is to take the tension off of your blade. This can be accomplished one of two ways. Either you can do it the way that most OTF users accidentally find out about soon after they purchase their knives, is they try to shoot it through a surface, which they soon find out doesn't work, and they accidentally break their knife. This can be fixed very simply just by pulling forward on the blade, and it's totally back in battery again. Now, the easier way to take the tension off your blade for disassembly is to just grab the spine of the knife, pull back, and the tension is off. Now, on a double edge, on a dagger style, you might have a little bit of trouble with that. It might be difficult to get your fingers on it without cutting yourself. In that case, you might want to do the shooting it into a hard surface method. You don't want the surface to be so hard, obviously, that it damages the tip of your knife just to where it'll stop the blade from coming forward. But either way, once you have gotten your blade detensioned, then just flip the knife over and go ahead and get to work on these screws. All of these screws are T9 Torx, and they are all exactly the same size and shape and length and everything. So there is no chance of getting these screws mixed up with one another. Or that is to say, it does not hurt if you get these screws mixed up with one another. And we will be taking the clip off as well. That is what this piece of metal is for. Just be careful when you are taking these screws out. Just be aware that the blade is loose in there, so it can sort of slide back and forth. So like if you're messing around with the front of the knife, make sure you don't accidentally slide it forward into your hand. It's not under tension, so it's not going to come flying out of there, but it can still slide around, so just be careful with that. So for taking the clip off, I like to use this little piece of, this is a piece of stainless steel filler metal for TIG welding, and it just fits nicely in there. If you have like a small screwdriver or something like that, it should fit in there as well. Just make sure, be careful not to break anything that you put in there. But so this just levers out of there. Here we have our clip and our clip screw, and then this plate just lifts off. So I'll try to provide a brief and concise description of how an OTF works. So you have, of course, the frame of the knife, which the blade slides in. Then you have the thumb actuator, the carrier, and the spring. So the spring has two hooks, one on each end. This hook is longer, this hook is shorter. This hook grabs onto the back of the blade, and this is what gives the blade its tension to fly forward. So, right now the blade is being held in, actually it's not, but when the blade is in its backmost position, it is being held in by this detent, and when it is in the frontmost position, it is being held in by this detent. So that's what that looks like. Blade is all the way back, it can't move because of this detent. This detent is overcome, moves forward, held in by this detent. And the reason it can't come forward out of the knife is because this metal disc hits this little metal protrusion right here. So basically, when the knife is assembled, it is completely locked within the handle of the knife and cannot come out aside from a major mechanical failure, which is unlikely to happen. So, with that being said, here is the carrier. Of course, this metal hook goes onto the back of the blade. Now, so when you have your thumb actuator up here, this, of course, goes over this little metal tab, so we don't really need this to demonstrate. So when you push forward, then when you push this forward, here, let me get the knife back into detent. So the hook is grabbing onto the back of the blade. As you push forward, that builds tension on this spring, and then as this slides forward, this little ramp right here pushes this detent down. Now, by the time the carrier gets to the point where it's pushing the detent down, you have added a significant amount of pressure to the spring, and that enables the blade, once the detent has been overcome, to shoot forward into the locked position. Once it is in the locked position, then Here we go. So this detent is down, and then it works the same way but in reverse. This metal hook catches on to this raised disc on the blade, and as you pull back, it builds pressure until it overcomes this detent, and once again the blade shoots back into the handle. So that is a quick overview of how an OTF works. There are better videos describing this. That is just my brief take on how these things work. So now we'll go ahead and put the thing back together. Well, I'll go ahead and fully disassemble it first. So there. That's how easy that is. You can totally clean this out now. You might be able to take the detents out. I haven't messed with it just because there's really no reason to. They don't have any dirt in them right now, and if they do, you could just probably take a can of compressed air, blast them out, and just make sure to keep them lubricated. This thing should last quite a long time. So go ahead and put this thing back in, pinch that detent down. I'm not going to let it come past this detent right here because that'll make it a little more difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and put my carrier back in. This can literally just slide around in here, and I do not care. As long as it is within the knife, that is all that matters. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my thumb slide back on. Make sure that the little raised portion of the thumb slide right here goes into its designated slot right here. And make sure that the indent here lines up with the raised portion on the carrier. And then just go ahead and put our second handle half back on. Make sure everything is okay there. Make sure the slide is where it's supposed to be. And of course, as you can see, there's still no tension whatsoever on that blade. The spring is totally lifeless right now. So I'm actually not going to put the pocket clip back on until I've gotten all the screws in. So I'm just going to go ahead and get all that done. This knife is amazingly easy to work with. It is easier to disassemble than a lot of my folding knives. And this one is an interesting, the OTF design in general is interesting because it is a pocket knife, but it is not a folder or a fixed blade. It is in a class of its own as far as pocket knives go. And these knives are automatic knives. Even though when the knife is just in your pocket or just not being used at all, when the blade is in, there is actually very little tension on the spring. Not enough to propel the knife out of, or not enough to propel the blade out of the front of the knife. It is only when you move the thumb slider forward that enough tension is added to the blade to propel the knife forward. Now, it is still an automatic because the definition of an automatic is that the blade is under spring pressure and then something is done to the blade to release that spring pressure. So definitely when you're pushing that thumb slider forward, the blade is under pressure and then it overcomes the detent, which sends the blade forward. So by definition, it is an automatic. Even though it is unlike a out the side automatic, the blade is not under the full tension of the spring at all times. So we've got all of our torque screws in there. I'm going to go ahead and just put the pocket clip back on, and then I will get the blade back into battery. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down with my piece of filler metal here. Alright, that's good and tight. Don't want to take it down too far because this is steel going into aluminum. I don't think there's any sort of steel insert in there, so just don't want to thread it down too tight. And then we can just get our blade back into battery there, and we are golden. So there we go. So there's the complete disassembly, reassembly of the CobraTec FS3 medium, and that will be it. So if you like this video, also check out my review of this knife. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day.